So hello friends, in the part 2 of crisis communication, we shall elaborate on media and authorities. There's a constant love-hate relationship, and we shall also look at the image repair theory by Benoit. So let us look at how the authorities and the media look at each other. There's generally a very interesting saying, they are going to conceal versus they only smell bad. So the media generally have this perception about authorities and organizations that they will never tell the whole truth, and that is why you find that media has a different kind of a narrative, which is very different from the government or the authorities. And the authorities generally have the perspective that about the media that they only smell bad, they never see what all good work is being done. In the context of public relations, the media generally feels that what is hidden is news, the rest is PR, which means that what the PR people, those who are in charge of communication, they are trying to conceal, they are going to hide, is the news they are looking for. The rest is all their eyewash of public relations. So in a free society and independent media, one expects plurality of views. However, due to cutthroat competition and the race for the eyeballs, the readers or the watchers often get more of the same. Many stories will bear that out. The same sensationalism in times of crisis, and I'm sure you would have seen that I remember the recent Uttarakhand crisis when there was a hydroelectric project involved and many people's bodies washed away and many bodies are yet to be recovered. And then one of the journalists, anchor from a mainstream news channel, is asking a woman who was waiting for her husband to return, because till such time they get a bad news, obviously there's a lot of hope, and she says, how are you feeling? So how would somebody feel in a in a situation like that? People are grief stricken. The media has to be very sensitive to what kind of questions to be asked, and there are a number of researches. I don't know whether there's anything in India, but it's called the grief journalism. How journalists cover grief. I recall a very interesting research in New Zealand, in which in an accident about 18-20 people died, and these researchers conducted a study which told them that the people, the families, the kith and kin of the victims who died, they said that they were feeling very stigmatized. Day in, day out, the media was covering it, and they said, we have gone in our shell. So the journalists also had to be very careful about covering the crisis, which is obviously not the normal time, and it breaks the status quo. So sensitivity is very important in coverage of disasters and crisis. Somebody said that 3 R's are very important in handling crisis management: response, responsibility, and resilience. Let us discuss one by one. Response. The first few moments, the first few hours are very crucial when a crisis breaks. How responsive the organization is to the agony and suffering of the people if involved in an accident or mishap is going to carry it forward, their image. If there's a danger to the lives of the people due to a product, gas leakage, flooding, how fast was the action taken? How early the help and succor reached those in need? These are some of the responses that will be under the scanner by the media, opinion makers, and public at large. And you would have seen that nowadays media has one narrative, but the people with almost everybody has a mobile phone which has a camera. Somebody can be at the site of the disaster. You've seen a lot of people uploading videos which become stories for mainstream media. They carry it forward. So it's very important that you have to be very careful about handling the response once a disaster or crisis has happened. I recall there was a train disaster in Bihar a few years ago. So one of the local district magistrate, a young IS officer, probably was handling the disaster since morning or maybe a couple of days. So he was caught on cameras maybe after a few days where he was chatting or smiling with somebody, and the media came out with the story that imagine the huge disaster, people are dying, and this DM is smiling. And what was the response to that? That he smiled. He was transferred. So it's very unfortunate. Sometimes media can be very unforgiving. So as somebody who's handling a crisis, we always, is not just what you do, your intention, your body language, your kinesics, how do you handle, are also important considerations which the PR people have to educate and train the people who are in charge of facing the media on a continuous basis. Responsibility. Whatever has happened, whosoever is responsible, what is the quantum of damage, are matters that need to go on the back burner once a crisis breaks out. People are not interested to know that immediately, but definitely they would like to know if the organization, it can be government or the company or an NGO who is in charge of that, is taking the responsibility wholeheartedly to tackle the situation so that it does not aggravate. Then resilience. Now, resilience has a multitude of meanings depending on the context in which it is used. How one responds to a crisis, both from the perspective of the victims and the manager, would reflect resilience. Maintaining calm and poise in difficult situations. I just told you about that Bihar situation. The tackling the situation cannot always be what the rule book says, but needs flexibility to respond to the situation. There's a very interesting story about 9/11 terrorist attack in America. You all know now Starbucks coffee is in India also. Now something can happen which you may not be even responsible about. Now when these emergency teams were rescuing people, the people who were hurt, who were to be rescued from those buildings. So one of these guys, that emergency ambulance, some people needed water. So he went to one of those Starbucks coffee outlet and picked up maybe 1 dozen or 2 dozen bottles of water and paid for it. After that, one of the journalists who was probably there, and this guy who picked up the water, maybe towards the evening, he called back Starbucks to check whether he was charged correctly. He believed that he was probably charged more because of he had how many number of bottles and how many it was charged. It was just a kind of a normal conversation on the phone, which one of the journalists heard being at Starbucks, and it became a huge crisis of reputation and reason for the Starbucks. The media started writing that how could Starbucks be so heartless to charge even for water for those who were dying or who were victims of the 9/11. It took Starbucks top management a long time to reverse that reputation damage, and then the top officer of Starbucks, he came on television to say that when somebody went to pick up water, probably the guy even didn't know who is taking the water from, and probably that guy behind the counter was not even probably authorized to give it free of cost. And he said that I'm not sharing how much we have already paid in charity, but then it's very unfortunate this happened. So somebody could have used one's reason. So I think it was probably just about $120 or something. So that check was sent to that emergency ambulance services to say that they were sorry, they should not have done it. So imagine a crisis situation, you may not be directly involved, but you could still be involved. So anybody, when a crisis of this magnitude happens, probably one has to be very sharp in one's responses. So some scholars have spoken of resilience on the part of the media reporting also. In the face of a devastating earthquake and tsunami, Japanese displayed rare resilience. This is a very interesting quote from the BBC. Colossal forces of nature have destroyed entire communities in Japan, and the survivors have had to confront the possibility of a catastrophe. But another story is also emerging of the remarkable resilience of the Japanese people. BBC quoted this on March 17, 2011. So it's very important that the media also has to show its resilience when they are covering not only resilience, even sensitivity. Sensationalism is not the name of the game when you're covering a crisis, when you're covering a disaster. and there's so many empirical studies suggest that media often has been little insensitive to the sufferings of the people, and sometimes in order to show the lapses on the part of authorities, they can be very critical, because when you're handling a crisis, you might make mistakes, but to show those mistakes as deliberate could be very demoralizing even for the authorities who are handling a crisis. So the media also has to be very, very sensitive. So as I said in the first part of crisis communication, that perceptions are very important, and perceptions are the first, you can say, thought process in the mind about a situation. Just to repeat, perceptions become opinions, they become convictions, they become volitions. So it's very important on the part of the disaster management authorities to map those perceptions at the initial stages, what is called the embryonic stages, and do your communication to reverse in case the perceptions are going in a different direction which is not based on facts. So any crisis would bring many perceptions of varying kinds based on many factors. So it's important for a PR person to manage perception before it is too late and at the embryonic stage, just to underline the word. So I'll just show you some random public relations as post a crisis. This is very important, when there's a nuclear power, you have that Kodaikollam nuclear project in southern part of our country. And many years ago, and there was a lot of agitation going on to close the nuclear power plant. And I recall Mr. Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister when probably said, I see a foreign hand in this disaster, in this agitation. And quickly Greenpeace, which is one of the largest NGOs in the world, they keep picking up issues in various countries, especially against hydro projects, thermal projects, nuclear projects. So next day there was an ad which says, can you see a foreign hand in that? They show those agitators, like most of women sitting, in dharna, and it came that, can you see a foreign hand? So this is very unfortunate, a foreign NGO trying to pick issues with the government of another country and trying to just make a scoop spoof of what the Prime Minister of a country said. This was an ad after Maruti Suzuki industrial unrest when a senior manager was killed. Incidentally, the ad is not talking about management, workers, bond, but of customer, company, bond, talking about resumption of work at Manesar. If you recall, a few years ago, there was a Maruti Suzuki industrial unrest and the workers became little agitated and they went inside, and one person was killed, and they say because he was injured, he could not come out of the room which had caught fire. And after some time, when things went back to normal, and you found this ad in the newspapers, and the first face value I saw, now thank God this must be a kind of truce ad between the management and the warring workers, but it was not so, because when this plant was closed for a few months, obviously people who had given order for the Marutis, they had not received it. So they were talking about customer company bond and not the bond between the worker and the management, which was still a binary kind of a situation. So this was that Sahara company which was into the eye of the storm, and they came out with a number of ads trying to say that they are the most patriotic nationalist, and the case is still on. The case is still on. So what are the lessons for disaster crisis managers, which include the public relations people who are in charge of handling the communication? Develop a strategy based on worst case scenario. As I said in my first part also, that preparedness and mitigation are very important. Don't wait for a crisis to happen, then you do only response and rehabilitation. So you must do a kind of worst scenario drill. What worse can happen in a future date, and depending on day or date, and depending on what are you doing? Are you in a nuclear power scenario? Are you a thermal project? Do you have a product? Do you have an automobile company? So what worst kind of things can happen? So we're prepared about that. The vital importance of pre-thinking. If you pre-think a disaster, obviously you are in a better position to handle that disaster. And once a disaster happens, the initial critical few moments when a crisis breaks are very important. Do you have a spokesperson? How are you responding to a crisis? Is it the media which has broken the crisis, the news about a crisis, or have you gone to the media with a crisis? There have been a number of case studies in which, the companies, when they knew there was an accident or a problem within a factory, on a very proactive manner, they made the video or the visuals, they made a press release and invited the press or sent the press to say that this is what has happened. See, when you are proactively handling a crisis, you are in control. But when you are reacting to a crisis, then you're only defending yourself. So this is the basic difference between proactive and reactive crisis. So the people in charge of crisis to be very careful. Be alert on graphics. Know the media mind and do a journal tracking the people who cover your company, cover the government. What kind of write-ups do they have? And when a crisis happens, isolate the crisis team from the daily grind. They can't be handling 20 other things and also crisis. They should be doing nothing but your crisis. And know your friends and adversaries. We saw when the Tata Nano problem happened in Nandigram in West Bengal many years ago, and how the friends of Tatas were the ones who were talking about, and he was not doing the talking himself, at least initially. The last part of my discourse is on sharing with you William Benoit's image repair theory. I won't say this is right or wrong, that's for you to take a call. But in case of a disaster, obviously image takes the a bad beating. So how the companies should use a strategy to repair the image. William Benoit is a professor, rather I should say was a professor. Unfortunately, he died last year. And those of you who would like to take it further, his theory, image repair theory, and his video is available on the internet. If you just write William Benoit's image repair theory, you can watch his video and also read his theory very carefully. There's a PDF file also. So in this case, for your understanding, I made a hypothesis of how the company would use a strategy in different situations, and my hypothesis is based on industrial unrest. So let's look at strategy number 1. Simply deny that you were responsible. So simple denial, we did not call the police in the first instance. So the scenario is that the industrial unrest, there's the workers and the management fighting, and there are some casualties. So the strategy 2 under denial would be shift the blame. The employees led when unrecognized union became unruly. They were pelting stones and also set on fire and set on fire an official vehicle. So this is what is the message action plan for you when you are denying strategy number 1 according to William Benoit's theory. Strategy number 2, evade responsibility, provocativeness. After trying to negotiate with them, we finally called the police after 40 minutes when we realized the situation was getting more violent. Diffusability, did not call the police early as we wanted to settle the issue amicably with warring groups of the employees. Third, accident. Unforeseen consequence. While trying to safeguard management personnel and property, police had to open lathi charge and in which 3 were injured. The cause of the death of 59-year-old employee is being ascertained, which means situation was that one guy also died. And this 59 years because at 60 you almost retire. He was an old guy. So they could even say that we are ascertaining why did he die. Was it due to police lathi charge or something else? So they are not giving a final situation. And good intention. Meant well in doing the act. Police used water cannons and resorted to lathi charge to safeguard life and property. This is again your strategy number 2 to evade responsibility. Let's look at the third. Reduce offensiveness, bolster, stress own good points. We always act responsibly. Lesser harm than it appears. The warring group gave ample reasons to start fire, but restraint was used. Second strategy, there is a minimize, differentiate. Act is less offensive than similar acts. The management and police use restraint in every way while dealing with the situation. Transcend. More important issue, both sides must honor and respect the decisions taken for reinstating suspended employees. So you get an idea that the unrest was because some employees were suspended, they started pelting stones, a vehicle of the authorities was damaged. So these people, management guys called the police, and there was a lathi charge, probably some firing also, and the water cannons were used. So this is a scenario I've created based on this strategy. So let's look at strategy number 4. Okay, reduce offensiveness. Reduce credibility of the attacker. The union did not give any notice for a tool down strike. The management was taken by surprise when the unruly mob entered and started damaging property and pelting stones. So you're attacking the accuser. As per the union laws, trade union laws and acts, they are supposed to give a notice on the tool down strike, which the management is trying to say they never gave. Compensate. Offer compensation. All injured, both from the management and the warring unions side, have been admitted to the city hospital. The expenditure on all will be borne by the company, and ex gratia amount of rupees so and so will be given to each of the injured, and rupees so and so to the one who lost the life. So you are trying to compensate for the damage, unfortunate damage, which is done as a part of the strategy to reduce offensiveness. Let's look at the last. Corrective action, repair damage. Memorandum of understanding to be signed between the management and the unions to use conciliation and negotiation as a method of sorting out issues in future. This is strategy number 4. And finally, mortification, great embarrassment and shame. If you think that you were responsible, the kind of action which followed, what they did, there's nothing wrong in apologizing. If you make a mistake, in case the management was at fault, show empathy for the dead and the injured by apologizing. You don't become small if you apologize, if it can create better working conditions. This is all is William Benoit's theory, and you would find that most of the companies or the government is using one or the other strategy when they are dealing with the media by telling their point of view. So with this, we come to an end the part 2 of crisis communication. I hope and believe it made sense and you are better empowered to deal with crisis in your personal lives, and also when you are handling crisis, when you start working, and also when you are giving examination at the end of the year. Thank you so much.